Welcome to Exploring Attachment. I'm Christian Herman, and today we're joined by none other than Jonathan Lloyd, a psychotherapist, attachment expert, and author. He wrote a very interesting book called Whales in the Desert, the function of metaphor in psychotherapy. Welcome, John.
Hi, Christian. Nice to see you, as always.
Great to see you. Great to see you. So, as you probably know, in this podcast, we follow like three basic questions that guide our conversation. So let's get right into the first one. Can you tell us a little bit of yourself and how did you came across attachment theory?
Okay. Well, I've been working as a therapist for about 20 years now. And when I was at the University of Manchester doing my professional doctorate, I met this wonderful guy called George MacDonald who was doing the course with me, and we got on really well. And we used to go for a beer after each university session. And we'd sit there in these little bars in Manchester with the rain coming down, and we'd say, what would be interesting? What can we do? And we thought, well, let's set up a CPD business, and we can get all these big names, and we had Richard Bowlby and Susie Orbach and Ernesto Spinelli, and all these people would come up to Manchester and do talks to this hungry audience pre-COVID, and it was all wonderful. We used to put croissants on for breakfast and have lovely lunches, and
Hmm.
it was great. And then one time we invited Mario Moroni up,
Oh,
and he was a big hit, of course. Uh,
yeah.
I was always
Mario is
interested in
always.
attachment, but and we always had the pleasure of going out for dinner with the speakers the night before, which was great.
Mhm.
I remember going out with Penny Parks, and she played her music in the restaurant while we were all there.
Wow. Okay.
together. But Mario, we got really close, and we invited him a few times to Manchester, and he came up, and he was really interested, and that whetted my appetite for attachment theory. And he saw in George and I an ability to put on a show. We were good at arranging conferences and workshops, and
Yeah.
most of it is about putting some good food on and allowing people to just mix
That's
and
an
relax.
important part, yes.
Yeah, that's the important
Yeah.
part. Natural light and decent food and an interesting day and a low price
Yeah.
was a good thing in Manchester.
Some classical psychoanalysis there involved. Yeah.
Absolutely.
The
So
pleasure principle.
Mario invited George and I onto the executive committee, mostly not because of our attachment theory expertise, but because of our marketing expertise and our ability to
Okay.
put on shows. And that was unfortunately George passed away shortly after that, and I was left, carrying the candle for both of us, which was great until we hit COVID, and then the world changed. As you know,
Yeah.
we went to online training, and George not being there, it wasn't the same for me anymore because it was our little show together. It was
Yeah, I
George.
can imagine.
George was great. He was a qualified engineer, and he would fix all the IT. He'd fix all the IT, then break it about 5 minutes before you were due to start, and then fix it again with about
Oh,
30 seconds to go.
so put a little drama
He
in
loved all the
yeah.
psychodrama. So we got involved in ION. I'm involved in the EC for about 10 years, probably more now. Time goes by when you get to a certain age. And I've been involved with the ION ever since, and it's whetted my appetite. So I've been on all the training, and it really informs my practice. Pretty much every session, I'm thinking about attachment theory. I'm talking about attachment theory. Today, I've been talking about attachment theory with clients and trying
Mhm.
to explain relationships and normalize relationships with people about what's going on. Don't take it personal. This is just the way it is. This is the attachment style. This is how we program ourselves to survive in the world. It's not your fault that this person is rejecting you or whatever.
Yeah.
And particularly in couples work, I really use it and explain it a lot in couples
It
work.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I see the
I
attachment
think
dance go on. I think we all have the attachment dance going on in all our relationships, particularly primary ones. And interestingly, I feel
yeah.
as though you could have two anxious and one will take the more avoidant stance generally. We could have two avoidant, one would be more anxious. And then
Mhm.
when they have a switch, that's when they usually end up in couples
Yeah,
therapy.
but it kind of for us it kind of makes sense. But when you discuss it and you share it with your clients, it's like they can't believe they waited like 30 years to get to know this tiny bit of information.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's really useful for them to work it out. And like I say, it takes the sting out of it
Yes, yes.
when they find out. And it's such an elegant, it's a bit like the most simple models, the parent, adult, child in TA, these elegant, simple, easy to understand, relatively easy to understand. I mean, it gets more complicated the more you look at it, but
Mm,
just it's something you can explain, something that everyone can get a grasp of. It
mhm.
makes sense to them. They know that kind of person. They know that kind of person. They kind of know what they are. And yeah, it's an
Which
elegant, elegant model.
maybe we should just clarify that this doesn't mean that they're less responsible of what they're doing.
No,
It
no,
means that we can better understand where it comes from and what's the logic behind it.
absolutely. It's not absolving people's responsibility, but it
Yeah.
explains relationships in such
Hmm.
uh, an easy to understand, and it makes sense. It
It
makes
makes
sense.
sense. It makes sense. Yes, as you said, it takes the stage, and it's like I'm not crazy, so it makes sense. Seeing it this way, there's a logic behind
Absolutely. Yeah, I always wondered, why because I take it of I'm earned secure 40 years into a relationship.
it.
It takes a long time, I think, sometimes.
Yes.
Um, wonder why I booked these business trips away when I'd come back from holiday. I didn't understand it. I thought it was something to do with, with her, but actually it's me and my need for space.
Yeah.
And I've had an intimate time with someone for a
Yes.
period.
And the way I thought having this space was by doing so and so, but
Hmm.
now I see that I can have my space by doing several other things that are maybe more
Absolutely.
adapted.
Yeah. Yeah. But when the other person knows what it's about, she can say, actually, I know you want to go, but actually, I really need you to be here this time.
Yeah.
And, you have to work something out.
Yes. 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 It's in couple therapy. It's very very useful to get to know those different ways of expressing our own needs and also how we decode the need of the others.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So attachment, I think it's underneath everything.
Yes. Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
And it even kind of informs the practice that the chair's the same,
Yes. Yes.
the same.
Because let's not forget, we psychotherapists, we have our own attachment system, right?
Absolutely. And I think it suits suits my avoidance style because I have intimate relationships with people for 1 hour a week and I don't see them for
Okay,
another
for 4 or 5 minutes, and
a week.
then
Yeah. So it's
you
contained.
yes, yes. And talking about attachment and your practice, John, let's go. Let's move into the second question. Do you have some maybe a concept or something that is we could say it's close to your heart that something you come regularly in your practice or a figure or something
Yeah.
that
I mean, yeah,
you might say this
I,
is one of my usual tools.
okay. My prof doc was done before I became heavily involved in attachment theory. My original research was the use of metaphor in therapy, hence the
Mhm.
book, which I got out rather hurriedly after George passed away. Volume two is currently being worked on, so hopefully
Okay.
that'll be out
Oh.
one day soon. Um, and in a similar way, but not the same, I think metaphors are around in every session. I think it's a universal language that we all use to try and explain something. I think when you want to explain something to some other human,
Mhm.
a metaphor is a very good way if you can land on the same cultural territory with each other.
Okay.
And I think it can be really useful as a way of explaining um, something to each other, and that can come from the therapist. And some therapists have this kind of shelf of metaphors that they will deliver to their clients to for certain situations. Um, and I think that can be really useful for some people. I've got some of my favorite stories that I tell to people, and
Oh,
really,
maybe you can share it in the podcast.
really gets really, really. I love the story that was told to me many years ago by not a therapist, but he was talking about two lumberjacks that had a competition with each other.
Uh-huh.
Who could chop the most trees down in a
Okay.
day? So the first therapist, first there's a Freudian
No,
say,
no.
the first lumberjack, let's call him Fred.
Yeah.
He would knock a few trees down, then he would disappear off for a while, and then come back and knock a few trees down, disappear off. And he would do that all day.
Hmm.
And then Bert, the other one, was just hitting and thrashing at the trees all day and never stopped. Just kept going, bum 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 all day. And at the end of the day, they measured up the trees, and surprise, surprise, Fred, the first one, had knocked more trees down than Bert. And Bert said, I can't understand this. I've been hitting these trees all day. I've never stopped. And you've been doing it and then disappearing, doing it, disappearing. Where have you been going? And he said, well, I've been sharpening my axe.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's a really good story for stressed out people, for people who are on that kind of hamster wheel of keeping going all of the time and hurry up
Very
drive.
good.
Yeah. And so much so I told this story to a CEO friend of mine, and he now has axe sharpening meetings.
Okay, okay. So
His staff,
he really enjoyed this story.
he really enjoyed it. Maybe a bit too much, but
Well,
so
that's
that's just an example of one I might pick off the shelf to because we love stories. So metaphors are mini stories, aren't they, really?
and what let me go a little bit further because I'll take advantage that you're here. How come it's easier, or is it easier? I don't know if this is the good word, but how come our minds use say this aha, and it has an effect to different layers of different aspects of our lives.
Yeah, I think
Um,
they have measured the
the last
brain.
time I
Brain.
grabbed an axe, it was like when I was like 12 years old, but it makes sense. You say yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
How come?
Yeah, I think it's based on we love stories. I think our brain lights up in different places when we talk about metaphors. We think we make more connections.
Yeah.
Maybe we have more visual images with those kind of stories and metaphors. And I just think they're really fruitful ways of communicating with each other. You can say something in a metaphor like that you know, it makes so much sense and it's not as threatening as I think you're working too hard and if you get it, you're going to get ill if you keep thrashing in those
Yes.
trees.
Yes, yes, yes. And you can get the image of this guy like really giving it all there and without such a good result.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have quite a lot of those. What I really want though, that's the real juicy material for me is when the clients come up with a metaphor of their own.
Okay.
And we can go into that metaphor and we can delve deeper into that metaphor and
Mhm.
we can find out more what's hidden under that metaphor or we can bring it back next week and it can be a running metaphor, it can be something of a measure of where they're at or what's going on for them. One client used to bring a car in metaphorically each week and it's just me in the car today, my husband's not in it today, or
Mhm.
I've got the whole family in with me today. It's
Yes.
a way of explaining what's going on and it was a shortcut to information.
And have you realized or noticed if as as people start using metaphors, like if they are more flexible in other areas of their lives, or they tend to take things a little bit more um, uh, less rigidly, or is
I
there
think,
like
yeah,
something you've
maybe, yeah,
noticed?
yeah. I mean, it's a difficult question to answer that one. I think, for example, you might think that someone on the autistic spectrum might struggle with metaphors, but often they will use them very beautifully and elegantly and often. I do believe that when you're in a more relaxed place, I think creativity is easier to access.
Hmm.
Um, but some people are very analytical. Some people are very in the head and very logical.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that they can't access metaphors, but they may be less um, willing to bring those themselves, or they may struggle with them a little bit. So
Mhm.
it's horses for courses, is another metaphor. I think for some people it's really rich territory, and it improves the rapport and the communication between the two people
Mhm.
that are sat there. And it's something that you own together. You can develop this thing together. It's like building a pot between you.
Yes.
You can build this thing, and I can throw a bit in, and he can throw a bit in, and yeah, we can build this thing, and it can really explain something between us about what we're trying to communicate.
So that's a very, very beautiful, interesting and beautiful image. Like to being in the secure relationship, coming back to attachment,
Hmm.
uh, allows clients to take the risk of thinking differently, thinking in linking things that maybe they wouldn't feel comfortable linking, but creating those metaphors
Yeah,
with
I think
help, with your help.
it's a two-way street. I think the building of the communication between the two of you using metaphors helps with the relationship. It builds the relational security, and therefore they're able to be more daring and creative within that space. So I think it builds on itself, the use of metaphor and the secure. But I've never really thought about that, but that's a good point. I think that
Yeah,
it feeds itself in a positive feedback loop.
absolutely. Because I guess I'm not sure. I'm just thinking out loud, but one could almost say that the antithesis of a metaphoric thought is something really concrete that allows just one way of looking at it, right?
Mm,
And when you're frightened, it's hard to let go of what you already have
mm.
got
Yeah,
hold of.
absolutely. Yeah, I think it can help with the very fixed, concretized views
Mhm.
that we can sometimes cling to.
Mhm.
The stories we tell ourselves to justify things. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. And it's a little bit. It's a it. You make me think. Also, it's a little bit like playing, isn't it?
Mm, there's a play element to it. We are playing with it.
It is, and it isn't. Like it's like a transitional space and a transitional play, as in Winnicott. Not like.
Yeah, Winnicott explains it. Yeah, he talks about we're in that kind of play, yeah, area with it. It can be a play. It can be serious, but I think it can be. It introduces a different energy, a
Mhm.
lighter energy, which sometimes can be playful and sometimes not. But it's certainly like a bit like humor. It just
Uh-huh.
changes the energy, I think, between the two people.
Yes. Yes. And that's why you also said something that we were discussing a little bit before we started recording it. That the cultural aspect, like being in the same wavelength, you have to construct something from where to throw like the the threads in order to connect.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
not that easy. It's not a given, right?
No, absolutely. And some metaphors have very cultural lenses.
Hmm.
It might not land. It might miss the client, or that metaphor might miss you. But the thing is, it's not the end of the world. It's not a threat. You can throw these things out, and if it's not understood, you'll try and find another way of trying to explain it.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's very rich and fertile, but you've got to be on the same hill playing together.
Yes, yes, and
Starting
that's
hill,
interesting
rock.
because even though we might um, be sensitive to culture, that doesn't mean that we can't find ourselves in the same field together,
Mm,
right?
mm.
Being our work with our clients, like we're getting to know each other is starting to build this field together in which we
Yeah,
can eventually play.
yeah. You know what what it's similar to when we do walk and talk therapy and we're out in the environment and that's giving us clues. You know, the client can say, "Oh, this river's running fast, like I'm feeling today,"
Mm.
and we can bring that kind of imagery and that connection into the room. We don't have to be in the field. We don't have to literally be in the field. I can ask him how quick his river is today.
Okay, yes, and that
Yeah,
will that'll he'll get that, and he'll be able to use that.
absolutely. And it's easier to talk about the river that was poisoned some time ago than the actual thing itself often. You know, we're talking about trauma and
Yes,
abuse. You know, it can be a way of a non-threatening, non-triggering way of talking about certain things with an understanding between the two of you.
yes, yes. It is fantastic because there's also, it seems to me, an element of resonance about you don't have to talk about the thing in itself, as you said, in order to, like, in a way, touch it or start to elaborate it. No.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember a lovely story about one of my friends who was using imagery with a client, and they went back to the river that was when he was 13, and the bullies were cleaning the river up for him.
Mm.
It was very restorative.
Wow, it's powerful.
Yeah, yeah, it touched me thinking
Yeah,
about it.
yeah, yeah. John, would you like to share a take-home message with the people who are listening to us today? And as we usually say, sometimes we find ourselves in a difficult situation, or as things are going around the world, or a little bit more stressing than we would like. But we would like to finish our podcast with maybe a take-home message that my
Okay, well,
listen.
bearing in mind the story I've told today, I think the take-home message is always take time to sharpen your axe.
Always, that's very metaphorical. Always take time to sharpen your axe.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I won't get into details. We will let each one accommodate that. How that, what does that exactly mean for each one of the people who are listening?
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Okay.
I like that. I like that. Well, it's been a pleasure, John. Um, let us know when the second part of your book is out. Otherwise, I would recommend everybody go and look for Whales in the Desert, right? The role of metaphors in psychotherapy. Great book. Lots of examples. Okay.
Thank you very much, Christian. Always a pleasure.
Bye bye.
Bye.